Everyone in the packed church hall flinched at the same time like one body. Gold ribbons hung from the ceiling. White flowers climbed the stage. A giant banner read, Lucy, Jeremaya and Isaiah Nwabuezi Holy Matrimony. Phones were already in the air, recording. Lucy stood at the front in a bright white gown that glittered under the lights. Her veil was pinned neatly. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile looked practiced, like she had worn it for weeks. Beside her, Pastor Paul Jeremaya held the mic in one hand and a thick Bible in the other. He looked proud. Almost too proud. And Isaiah stood quietly in a dark suit, hands clasped in front of him, trying to breathe normally, because something had just happened that was not part of the plan. A side door creaked open. People turned. A woman shuffled in slowly, wearing a faded blue wrapper and an old headscarf that didn't match. She looked lost, but her face was gentle, soft, like someone who still believed the world could be kind. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Lucy. Her face lit up. Lucy, the woman said, smiling wide. My daughter, you are so beautiful. The room froze. Somebody whispered, Who is that? Another person said, Is that her mother? Lucy's smile broke just a little. Pastor Paul's face tightened, and Isaiah's chest turned cold. The woman stepped forward again. She lifted her hands like she wanted to bless Lucy. Her fingers trembled, but her smile stayed. I came for your wedding, she said happily. I was looking for you. I walked and walked. Lucy's eyes darted around like a trapped bird. Her cheeks flushed. Then, in front of everyone, friends, church members, cameras, guests, Lucy moved, fast. She stepped down from the stage and grabbed the woman's wrist. Not gently. Not like a daughter, like a stranger trying to stop trouble. What are you doing here? Lucy hissed through her teeth, still smiling for the cameras. Her voice was low, but the anger in it was sharp. Who told you to come? The woman blinked, confused. Lucy, I came because you are my child. Lucy's fingers tightened. People leaned forward. Someone's phone zoomed in. Then Lucy said the words that made the hall go dead quiet. Stop calling me that. You are embarrassing me. A few gasps escaped. Quiet, shocked sounds. The woman's smile wobbled, like a candle in wind. I'm your mother, she whispered. Lucy swallowed hard, and something ugly rose inside her. It was fear, mixed with shame, mixed with anger that she could not control. She pulled the woman closer and whispered again, with eyes wide and desperate. Do you want to ruin everything? Look at you. Why did you come here like this? The woman's eyes darted to the crowd. Suddenly, she seemed to notice all the faces staring, all the phones, all the judgment. Her hands fell to her sides. She tried to laugh it off. I can sit. I will sit. I will just watch my daughter marry. I will not talk. But Lucy shook her head quickly. No, Lucy said. No. You cannot be here. She pushed the woman's shoulder, trying to turn her back toward the door. And that was when Isaiah finally moved. He stepped down from the stage. Slowly, like each step cost him something. The hall was so silent, you could hear the soft drag of his shoes on the floor. Lucy paused, still holding the woman's wrist. Isaiah stopped beside them. He stared at Lucy first. His eyes looked wet, but his face was firm. Then he looked at the woman, at her tired face, at her shaking hands, at the small scars on her fingers like she had once done hard work for other people, and Isaiah's voice came out rough. Lucy. Lucy turned quickly. Isaiah, please, not now. But Isaiah didn't stop. He looked at the crowd, then at Pastor Paul, then back at Lucy. And he said, clearly, so everybody could hear, this woman is not a disgrace. This woman is the reason I am alive today." A wave of murmurs ran through the hall. Lucy's grip loosened. Pastor Paul's head snapped up. "What are you saying?" Isaiah's eyes stayed on the woman, and his voice softened as if he was speaking to a memory. "I remember her," he said. "I remember the day I had nothing." He paused, swallowing. His throat worked like he was trying not to cry. "Years ago, when I was sleeping on the church floor, when people walked past me like I was trash, when I was hungry for days." The woman stared at him, confused, still smiling faintly, like she didn't understand the danger she was in. Isaiah turned to the crowd again. "This woman used to come to church early," he said. "Before sunrise. She would sweep. She would cook. She would feed children who were not even hers." His voice shook now. "One day I fainted behind the church building. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared." A soft sound rose from the crowd, people holding their breath. Isaiah pointed gently at the woman. She noticed. Lucy's eyes widened. "Isaiah." Isaiah ignored her. "She carried water. She washed my face. She sat with me until I could stand. And when I said thank you, she said..." Isaiah blinked fast. She said, "My son, don't thank me. You will be great one day, and when you are great, don't become proud. Remember the weak." Silence. Not polite. Silence. Real silence, heavy and uncomfortable. The woman's mouth parted slightly. She frowned like she was trying to find the memory in her head. Isaiah stepped closer to her and spoke gently. "Mama Stella." At the sound of her name, the woman's eyes brightened like a light came on inside. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. I know that name." She touched her chest. "Stella." Isaiah nodded, his eyes shining. "You are Stella," he said, "and you helped me when nobody else did." Then Isaiah faced the crowd again. "So I will say this clearly," he said, voice firm now. "This woman is a mother to many, not just to Lucy. To many." A woman in the crowd wiped her eyes. Another person whispered, "God forgive us." Pastor Paul stepped forward sharply, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like joy. "Isaiah," he said into the microphone, "this is not the time for drama. Let us focus. The bride is..." Isaiah cut him off with a look. "No, sir," Isaiah said, still calm. "This is the time." Then he turned and looked at Lucy. Lucy's eyes were shining too, but not with tears of love. With panic. With shame. With a fear so deep it made her lips tremble. Isaiah spoke quietly now, but the mic picked it up. "Lucy," he said, "if you can treat your own mother like this in front of people, what will you do to me when nobody is watching?" Lucy's chest rose and fell quickly. "Isaiah, please," she whispered. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," Isaiah said. The hall started murmuring again. The tension spread like fire. Pastor Paul lifted the mic. "Everyone, calm down. This is a holy day." But Isaiah raised his hand, and strangely, the crowd listened to Isaiah more than they listened to Pastor Paul. Isaiah turned back to Stella. His voice became soft again. "Mama, please, come and sit," he said kindly. "You are welcome here." Stella's smile returned, shaky but happy. She nodded quickly. "Thank you, my son." Lucy suddenly moved again, stepping in front of Stella like a wall. "No," Lucy said out loud now, and the word hit the hall like a slap. "She is not sitting anywhere near the front." A gasp burst out. Pastor Paul snapped, "Lucy!" But Lucy didn't stop. Her eyes were wild. "She will ruin everything," Lucy cried. "Look at her. She will confuse people. She will start saying nonsense. She will embarrass me." Stella flinched as if Lucy's words were stones. Isaiah's jaw tightened. He looked at Lucy for a long moment. Then he said something so quiet, yet so dangerous, that even the air seemed to stop moving. "If you touch her again," Isaiah said, "I will walk out of this wedding, Right now. In front of everybody. Lucy froze. Pastor Paul froze. The crowd froze. And on the last row of seats, a man no one seemed to recognize slowly crossed one leg over the other. His suit was simple, but the watch on his wrist was not. His eyes were steady, watching, like he had been waiting for this exact moment. He leaned to the woman beside him and whispered, almost amused, "Now, let's see who Lucy really is." Lucy stared at Isaiah, trembling. Isaiah stared back, pain written all over his face. Stella stood between them, confused, holding her wrapper tightly like it was the only thing keeping her safe, and Pastor Paul gripped the microphone so hard his knuckles turned white. Because Isaiah had just drawn a line, and if Lucy crossed it, the wedding would explode, and the man on the last row looked like he already knew what would happen next. That night, the rain fell hard over Lagos. Not the gentle kind, the loud kind, the kind that feels angry. Lucy sat on the edge of the hotel bed in Ikoyi, still wearing part of her wedding makeup. One eyelash was loose. Her lipstick had faded. The room smelled like roses and tension. Isaiah stood near the window, staring out at the city lights. He hadn't taken off his suit. He hadn't sat down. He hadn't spoken since they left the church hall. The silence between them was heavy, thick. Lucy finally broke it. "You embarrassed me today," she said softly. Isaiah laughed once. A short, dry sound that surprised even him. "No," he replied. "You embarrassed yourself." Lucy's head snapped up. "You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." Isaiah turned slowly. His eyes were calm, but they hurt. "I didn't plan to," he said. "You didn't plan to push your own mother either. Yet here we are." Lucy stood up. Her hands shook. "You don't understand what it's like," she said. "My whole life has been about protecting my father's image. The church, the members, the donors, everything." Isaiah walked closer. "And your mother?" he asked quietly. "What about protecting her?" Lucy looked away. "She changed." Lucy whispered. After everything she went through, she changed. She would talk to herself, she would wander. People would laugh. Isaiah nodded slowly. "So, you hid her?" Lucy swallowed. "Yes." "You abandoned her?" Lucy flinched. "We sent her somewhere." Isaiah's voice sharpened. "Where?" Lucy didn't answer. The rain hit the windows harder. Isaiah took a breath, then another. "Lucy," he said, "I will not marry someone who is ashamed of kindness." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "I love you." Isaiah's voice cracked. "Love is not just words." He turned away again. "I saw something today," he continued. "Not just what you did, but how easy it was for you to do it." Lucy stepped closer. "I can change." Isaiah finally faced her fully. "Then prove it," he said. Lucy nodded quickly. "Anything." Isaiah paused. "This was the hard part. There is something you don't know about me," he said. Lucy's heart skipped. "What?" "I am not who your father thinks I am." Lucy frowned. "What does that mean?" Isaiah looked at her carefully. "Before we go any further, I need to test your heart." Lucy stiffened. "Test?" "Yes," he said. "Tomorrow morning, a news report will come out." Lucy's breath caught. "What report?" "That my business has collapsed," Isaiah said evenly. "That I am bankrupt." Lucy stared at him. "That's not funny." "It's not a joke." Lucy shook her head. "But your company will be reported as gone." Isaiah finished. "Lost investments, failed deals, everything." Lucy's chest tightened. "Why would you do that?" "To see who stays," Isaiah replied. Lucy's eyes moved quickly, thinking. "And if I stay?" she asked. Isaiah's voice was low. Then we move forward. And if I don't? Isaiah didn't answer. Lucy stepped back, breathing hard. You think I care about money? She asked. Isaiah looked at her gently. I hope you don't. Lucy wiped her face. I'll prove it. Isaiah nodded once. Good, he said. Because after today, there is no turning back. The next morning, the news spread fast. Breaking news. Isaiah Dwabuese's business empire reportedly collapses overnight. Phones buzzed. Blogs posted. Church WhatsApp groups exploded. By afternoon, Pastor Paul had called Lucy 17 times. Lucy finally answered. What is this nonsense? Pastor Paul thundered over the phone. People are calling me, saying your husband-to-be is finished. Lucy closed her eyes. Daddy, calm down. Calm down? Pastor Paul snapped. Do you know how this makes me look? Lucy swallowed. Isaiah says it's temporary. Temporary? Pastor Paul scoffed. I warned you about this man. I warned you. Lucy said nothing. Cancel the wedding. Pastor Paul said sharply. Lucy's heart dropped. What? Cancel it. He repeated. We cannot tie our family name to disgrace. Lucy's voice shook. Daddy? No. There was a pause. Then Pastor Paul said something colder. Do you want to destroy this ministry? Lucy's hands trembled. Isaiah is still the same man. No. Pastor Paul replied. He is now a liability. Lucy hung up, tears rolling down her face. Isaiah watched her from across the room. He wants to cancel the wedding. Lucy whispered. Isaiah nodded slowly. And you? Lucy wiped her tears. I won't. Isaiah's chest loosened slightly. I choose you, Lucy said. Not status. Isaiah stepped closer. He searched her face. You're sure? Lucy nodded. Yes. Isaiah exhaled. For the first time since the church incident, he smiled. But Pastor Paul was not done. On the wedding day, the church was full again. Cameras everywhere, murmurs everywhere. Pastor Paul stood at the altar with a stiff smile. Lucy stood beside Isaiah, holding his hand tightly. When it was time for the sermon, Pastor Paul cleared his throat. My children, he began, voice smooth. Marriage is about wisdom. Isaiah's grip tightened. Not every love story is blessed. Pastor Paul continued. Some are distractions sent to test us. The room stirred. Lucy frowned. Daddy. Pastor Paul raised his voice. We must not join ourselves to failure, he said, eyes locking on Isaiah, especially when warning signs appear. Gasps echoed. Isaiah felt heat rise in his chest. Pastor Paul turned to him fully. Isaiah, he said loudly, do you still have the capacity to take care of my daughter? The question hit like a slap. Lucy stepped forward. Daddy, stop. But Pastor Paul wasn't finished. Answer, he demanded. Isaiah opened his mouth and Lucy spoke first. Yes, she said firmly. He does. The church went quiet. Lucy lifted her chin. I choose him, she said, with money or without it. Isaiah stared at her. Pastor Paul's face darkened. You foolish girl, he hissed into the mic. You are throwing away everything. Lucy shook her head. No, I am choosing love. The crowd erupted in whispers. And in the back row, the same quiet man from before smiled again. This time, wider, he leaned back and whispered to himself. She passed. Isaiah squeezed Lucy's hand. But before anyone could speak again, a phone buzzed loudly. Then, another, and another. People began checking their screens. Eyes widened. Whispers turned sharp, because a new message had just dropped, one that would change everything. And Pastor Paul hadn't seen it yet. The whispering didn't stop. It grew. Phones glowed in hands all across the church. People leaned toward each other, murmuring, scrolling, rereading. Lucy felt it before she understood it. Something had shifted. Isaiah noticed it too. The air felt tighter, sharper, like the moment just before a storm breaks. Pastor Paul was still speaking into the microphone, unaware. "And that is why wisdom must guide our choices," he said, voice loud and proud. "Because love without provision is suffering." Lucy's heart pounded. A woman in the front row gasped softly. Another man stood halfway, then sat again, confused. Lucy turned slightly and whispered to Isaiah, "What is happening?" Isaiah didn't answer. His eyes were scanning the room. Then Pastor Paul finally noticed. He frowned. "What is going on?" he asked sharply. No one answered him. Someone laughed nervously. Another person said, "Check your phone." Pastor Paul paused. Slowly, annoyed, he pulled out his phone. He looked. Once. Twice. His face drained of color. The microphone slipped slightly in his hand. Lucy watched her father's expression change from confidence to confusion to fear. "Daddy?" she whispered. Pastor Paul cleared his throat. This is fake news," he said quickly, forcing a laugh. "People like to spread lies." But his voice shook. Isaiah's phone buzzed too. He didn't look at it. He already knew. Pastor Paul raised the phone closer to his face, squinting. Then his hand started trembling. Someone read aloud from the back of the church, unable to help themselves. Correction issued. Earlier reports of Isaiah Nwabweze's business collapse were false. Sources confirm assets remain intact. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Lucy's knees weakened. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly. Pastor Paul's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Another voice followed, louder now. Further investigation reveals Isaiah Nwabweze as majority stakeholder in multiple international companies. The murmurs turned into full noise. What companies? International. Who is this man? Lucy's heart raced. She turned to Isaiah, her voice barely a whisper. "Isaiah, what is this?" Isaiah looked at her. Really looked at her. "I told you I wasn't who your father thought I was," he said softly. Pastor Paul suddenly slammed the microphone back to his mouth. "Enough!" he shouted. "This wedding will not continue." The room went silent again. Lucy stared at him in disbelief. "Daddy!" Pastor Paul's face was tight, angry, desperate. "I will not hand my daughter to confusion," he said, "especially not to a man surrounded by scandal." Isaiah stepped forward calmly. "There is no scandal," he said. "Only truth." Pastor Paul pointed at him, shaking. "You deceived us." Isaiah nodded. "Yes." The word hit hard. Lucy flinched. "Isaiah, I deceived you with poverty." Isaiah continued, voice steady, "Not with character." The crowd leaned in. "I needed to know something," Isaiah said, turning slightly so everyone could hear. "I needed to know who would still stand when money disappeared." His eyes moved slowly and landed on Lucy. "You stood." Lucy's breath caught. "And who would panic when status was threatened?" Isaiah said, turning to Pastor Paul. The church felt smaller, like the walls were listening. Pastor Paul laughed sharply. "You tested us. You think you are God?" Isaiah shook his head. "No. I think I was once poor, and I learned something from it." He paused. Greed shows itself under pressure. A few people nodded quietly. Pastor Paul's pride flared. "You think money makes you righteous?" He snapped. "No," Isaiah replied, "but it reveals who worships it." Lucy felt tears slide down her cheeks. Not from pain this time, from understanding. Pastor Paul turned to the congregation. "My people," he said urgently, "this man is dangerous. He is manipulating emotions. We must protect the church. A voice rose from the side. Protect it from what? All heads turned. An elderly woman stood slowly, leaning on her cane. From truth? She asked. Another man stood. Pastor, you humiliated him first. Someone else added, and you humiliated your wife years ago. A murmur of agreement followed. Pastor Paul's eyes darted around. Sit down, but the room had changed. Authority had slipped. Lucy took a step forward, her voice shaking but clear. Daddy, she said, why didn't you tell me the truth about my mother? Pastor Paul froze. What truth? He asked sharply. Lucy swallowed. About where she was sent. About why she was hidden. Silence stretched. Isaiah felt his chest tighten. Pastor Paul avoided Lucy's eyes. That is not your concern, he said coldly. Lucy's voice cracked. She was once your wife. She served this church. She fed people. She prayed for strangers. Pastor Paul snapped. She became a problem. Gasps filled the room. Lucy flinched like she'd been slapped. Isaiah stepped beside her. She became inconvenient. Isaiah corrected quietly. Pastor Paul turned red. You don't know what you're talking about. Isaiah looked toward the side of the church. Mama Stella, he called gently. Everyone turned. Stella sat quietly on a bench near the aisle, hands folded, eyes wandering. Isaiah walked toward her. He knelt. Do you remember your children's kitchen? He asked softly. Stella frowned, thinking, yes. She said slowly, I cooked. I fed them. They laughed. Isaiah nodded. Do you remember who helped you? She looked up at Pastor Paul. Her eyes softened. My husband, she said. He used to hold my hand. The room went dead quiet. Pastor Paul's face twisted. And do you remember when he stopped? Isaiah asked gently. Stella's brow creased. She hesitated. Then her voice dropped. He said I was a burden. Lucy covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Pastor Paul exploded. This is enough. He turned to the congregation. This wedding is cancelled. Isaiah stood slowly. No, he said calmly. It's not. Pastor Paul laughed bitterly. And who will stop me? Isaiah straightened his shoulders. I will. Pastor Paul scoffed. With what authority? Isaiah reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. Because, Isaiah said quietly, this church was built on offerings from people like Mama Stella, not on fear. The crowd murmured again. And because, Isaiah added, I funded the new children's wing. Shock rippled through the room. Lucy's eyes widened. You... What? Isaiah looked at her briefly, anonymously. Pastor Paul staggered back a step. You're lying. Isaiah met his gaze. Check the records. Pastor Paul's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came. Isaiah turned back to Lucy. You passed the test, he said softly. But the story isn't over. Lucy's chest heaved. Isaiah, I'm sorry, she whispered. Isaiah nodded. I know. Then, he looked toward Pastor Paul again. And now, Isaiah said, voice firm, the truth will finish what the lie started. The church doors creaked open behind them. Heavy footsteps entered. And the room froze. Because the people walking in were not guests. They were leaders. And Pastor Paul suddenly looked very small. The footsteps echoed down the aisle. Slow, heavy, unavoidable, every head turned. 5 men and 2 women walked into the church, dressed simply but neatly. No robes, no noise, no rush, the kind of people who didn't need to announce themselves to be taken seriously. The lead man stopped near the altar and spoke calmly. Pastor Paul Jeremaya. Pastor Paul swallowed. Yes? My name is Elder Kunle Adebayo, the man said. We are members of the Church Oversight Council. A sharp intake of breath spread through the room. Lucy's heart began to race again. She had heard of them. Everyone had. They rarely showed up unless something was very wrong. Elder Kunle continued, his tone steady. We received multiple complaints about misconduct, abuse of authority, and misuse of church funds. Pastor Paul forced a smile. On my daughter's wedding day. This is not about timing. Elder Kunle replied. It's about truth. The word hung in the air. Isaiah stepped back slightly, giving space. This was no longer his battle alone. Pastor Paul lifted his chin. This is a distraction. This man, he pointed at Isaiah, has caused confusion here today. Elder Kunle looked at Isaiah briefly, then back at Pastor Paul. We are aware of Isaiah Nwabweze, he said, and we are also aware that he has quietly supported this church for years. Murmurs broke out again. Pastor Paul's smile cracked. Lucy felt dizzy. Her hands were cold. Elder Kunle turned to the congregation. Today, he said, we are suspending Pastor Paul Jeremaya from all leadership duties, pending investigation. The words landed like thunder. Someone cried out softly. Pastor Paul staggered. You can't do this. Elder Kunle nodded. We already have. Pastor Paul's voice rose, sharp and desperate. After everything I've built. A woman from the council spoke this time. You built influence, she said. But you forgot compassion. Lucy's knees buckled. Isaiah caught her elbow gently, steadying her. Pastor Paul turned to Lucy, panic flooding his face. Lucy, he pleaded, lowering his voice. Say something. You are my daughter. Lucy stared at him. For a moment, she saw the man who once prayed over her at night, the man who used to lift her onto his shoulders after service. And then she saw something else. The man who hid her mother. The man who chose image over mercy. Lucy shook her head slowly. I already said something, she whispered. You just didn't listen. That hurt him more than shouting ever could. Pastor Paul turned wildly, looking for allies. But none came. People avoided his eyes. Some looked ashamed, some looked angry. Some looked relieved. Isaiah stepped forward again, but his voice was quiet now. This didn't start today, he said. It started the day Mama Stella was treated like a secret. All eyes shifted to Stella. She sat calmly, humming softly to herself, unaware of the storm around her. Isaiah knelt beside her again. Mama, he said gently, would you like to come with me? She smiled. Yes, my son. Isaiah stood and addressed the council. She needs care, he said. Real care, not hiding. Elder Kunle nodded. We agree. Lucy's chest tightened. Where will she go? Isaiah looked at Lucy. To a psychiatric hospital, he said softly, one that treats with dignity, with doctors who listen. Lucy nodded, tears spilling freely now. Thank you. Pastor Paul scoffed bitterly. So now you play the hero? Isaiah looked at him calmly. No. I'm just paying back kindness. Pastor Paul laughed sharp and hollow. You think this makes you better than me? Isaiah paused. I think it makes me responsible, he replied. That silence again. The heavy kind. Elder Kunle stepped forward once more. Pastor Paul, he said, you will vacate the parsonage by the end of the week. A low gasp rippled through the hall. Pastor Paul's knees weakened. You're throwing me out. You walked away from people long before today, Elder Kunle said gently. We're just acknowledging it now. Pastor Paul looked around, desperate. Lucy, he whispered one last time. Lucy didn't move. Isaiah felt her fingers tighten around his, and for the first time, Lucy didn't feel small. Pastor Paul turned and walked down the aisle alone. No applause. No shouting. just the sound of shoes against marble. When the doors closed behind him, the church felt lighter. But the story was not done. Isaiah helped Stella stand. She looked around and smiled. "Is it time to go home?" she asked. Isaiah swallowed. "Yes, Mama, but first, we heal." Lucy leaned down and hugged her mother carefully, like she was afraid she might disappear. "I'm sorry," Lucy whispered. "I'm so sorry." Stella patted her back gently. "It's all right. You were scared." That broke Lucy. She cried harder than she had all day. As they walked toward the exit, someone whispered from the crowd, "What happens to the church now?" Elder Kunle answered calmly, "We rebuild." Isaiah stopped near the door and turned back once more. His eyes met Lucy's. He said quietly, "Will be the hardest." Lucy nodded, wiping her tears. "I'm ready." Outside, the rain had stopped, but the real storm had only just begun. The hospital smelled like clean sheets and quiet hope. Not the sharp smell Lucy feared. Not the cold place she imagined. Just soft light. Calm voices. White walls that didn't judge. Stella sat on the bed, swinging her feet gently like a child waiting for school to start. Her hair had been washed. Her wrapper replaced with a simple gown. She looked lighter already, like a weight had been lifted from her chest. Isaiah stood near the door, speaking quietly with the doctor. "She responds well to kindness," the doctor said. "Her mind is tired, not broken." Lucy pressed her hand to her mouth. Tired. That word stayed with her. Not mad. Not useless. Just tired. Lucy walked closer and sat beside her mother. "Do you remember me?" she asked softly. Stella tilted her head. "You look like my daughter." Lucy nodded, tears spilling. "I am." Stella smiled. "Then don't be afraid." Lucy broke down fully then. Not the quiet crying she did in public. The messy kind. The kind that shakes your shoulders and empties your chest. Isaiah stepped back, giving them space. That was the moment Lucy understood something simple and painful. Love doesn't disappear. It waits. The news spread fast. Not the fake collapse. The real story. Blogs that once praised Pastor Paul now asked hard questions. Church members talked. Old stories resurfaced. Donations were frozen. The council released a statement. Pastor Paul Jeremaya was officially impeached. No pulpit, no title, no crowd, just silence. People who once followed him avoided his calls. People he ignored remembered everything. And slowly, painfully, he was left alone with the version of himself he had spent years protecting from truth. 3 months later, the church doors opened again. No banners, no loud music, just people. Lucy sat beside Isaiah in the second row, holding his hand tightly. Stella sat in front, calm, steady, eyes clear. She wore a simple dress and a small cross around her neck. The council stood at the altar. Elder Kunle spoke. "This church will no longer be led by fear," he said, "or by image." He paused, then turned toward Stella. This woman served quietly for years. Fed children. Cleaned floors. Loved without applause. Stella blinked. Confused. "We are asking her," Elder Kunle continued, "to lead us not as a ruler, but as a reminder." Gasps filled the hall. Lucy's heart nearly stopped. Stella stood slowly. "I'm not important," she said honestly. Elder Kunle smiled. "That's why you are." People stood. One by one. Applause grew. Not loud but deep. Real. Stella looked back at Lucy, unsure. Lucy nodded through tears. "Go," she whispered. "This time, don't hide." Stella walked forward. Not rushed. Not proud. Just present. Isaiah watched it all quietly. The test was complete. That night, Lucy and Isaiah sat on the balcony of their Ikoyi home. The city lights blinked below them. The air was soft. I almost lost you, Lucy said. Isaiah nodded. You almost lost yourself. Lucy looked down. I was afraid. I know, he replied. Fear makes us cruel when we don't face it. Lucy leaned into him. Why didn't you leave? Isaiah thought for a moment. Because I saw who you could become, he said. And because your mother once saw who I could become. Lucy smiled weakly. Love heals. Isaiah smiled back. And truth restores. They sat in silence, not empty silence. The good kind. Commentary, lessons, and character psychology. This story teaches something simple, but hard. How you treat the weak reveals who you really are. Lucy was not evil, she was afraid of shame. And fear made her forget love. Pastor Paul did not fall because of money. He fell because he chose power over people. Stella did not rise because she was strong. She rose because she stayed kind, even when forgotten. And Isaiah, he learned that wealth can test others, but character must test itself first. Greed always falls. Love heals, truth waits patiently, then speaks loudly. And sometimes, the person the world hides is the one meant to lead it. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? Do well to let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Stay blessed.